begin? But we have so many things to talk about. So let me begin by introducing you and welcoming all of our listeners today and the people who are also subsequently going to hear this distance learning program. So my name is Ellen Shaplowski, and I'm co-founder of the foundation along with Grandmaster Nan Lu. And today, of course, we're welcoming Dr. Christine Page, and we're going to be talking about oneness, women, and everyday health. So it just seems a little bit counterintuitive, oneness, what's that about, and everyday health, and women who are so vital to this culture and society and the time of the planet that we're in. So Dr. Page is a longtime friend of our TCM World community. You've certainly shared your wisdom many times, including at our conference called Building Bridges of Integration for Traditional Chinese Medicine. And everybody out there can read about her on ChristinePage.com, and you also have a Facebook page, so Dr. Christine Page on Facebook. And that's a lively page and a fun one to read. So we'll talk about your journey in a minute. But for those who don't know Dr. Christine Page, she's a Western-trained physician with a medical degree from the Royal Free Medical School, University of London. You founded one of the first integrative health centers within the British National Health Service, and you've played an important role in their acceptance of alternative therapies. So to begin with, her career was in pediatrics, obstetrics, and gynecology. And of course, the trajectory has gone on from there to many, many different things, and a place where Dr. Page is now, which is extraordinary in terms of bringing consciousness into healing, which is so exciting. And of course, you're the author of 7 books, and one of them is the best-selling Frontiers of Health, which of course we also have at our foundation bookstore. And now you've produced the Healing Power of the Sacred Woman, and the newest one is Handbook of Women's Histories, which I kind of can't wait to read. So Dr. Page combines a unique ability to integrate science and consciousness. And your gift of inner sight lets you connect intuitively. And I think what's so extraordinary is that you're able to open a doorway to the full experience of being human, to not only looking at the physical part of ourselves, but also that unseen, intuitive side that's connected to universal love, universal energy. Anybody who's been to your spirit mapping sessions, wow, they know the ability that you bring. And it's certainly behind that is, it's not just an ability, it's passion and compassion. And I think those in this day and age are a rare commodity. So Master Lu reminds us to heal for real. We have to consult our internet, not the internet. And similarly, I've heard you say real healing and health comes from listening to your heart, living your truth, and enjoying the deepest possible connections. So I think that's a beautiful place to start. And thank you for being with us today. And I guess we have so much to say, but, a lot of people ask you, Christine, they probably ask you, like, how did you do this? How did you go about this journey? I think what we would like to know is, why did you do this? Why did you make all of these transitions through your life to be where you are today?
Wow, what a wonderful introduction. Thank you, Ellen. Thank you, TCM Foundation, for letting me be part of this fabulous webinar. It's a good question, why rather than what. It took me back to a memory I had. I have very early child memories, and one was having a doll, and this doll broke, can't quite remember how the circumstances, but my parents said, oh, well, we'll put it in the trash, we'll put it in the dustbin. and I went, no. I probably was still only 18 months, 2 years old, but it was like, oh, that's not logical. That doesn't make sense. And I think that sense, I have an amazing sense of curiosity. It goes along with my Gemini status. But I'm always curious. And I think, when they ask you so one of the questions they ask you when you want to become a doctor is, why do you want to become a doctor? And I naturally do care. I deeply care about people, but I'm also curious. And I think that curiosity is something that always takes me to that next level. Why aren't people getting better? Why is what we're offering them not working? Why are we suppressing symptoms rather than curing people? And so I am the real researcher. You know, I've met people who say, well, you don't do, you know, research in a laboratory. And I say, no, I do it on the run. I do it mine is real research. And it led to the writing of Frontiers of Health because I became a GP, a general practitioner, family doctor, and I would see people with the same personalities having the same illnesses. And I thought, wow, my curious and my research mind said there's got to be a link with the woman who's got low back pain and complaining that nobody's supporting her. And when you see at least three things happening time over, you know, when three things happen, you should take notice of them. And, of course, I was seeing more than just three patients with the same personality types with illness. And I went, that's got to be something we explore. And I feel that the saddest part was, and I'll just say this, when I was trained as a young doctor, we were taught that we make our diagnosis on 80% of what we hear from the patient, 15% on what we palpate, what we feel, what we see, and just 5% on our tests. Because by the time we send someone for a test, for a blood test or for an x-ray, we should know the diagnosis. And in neurology, when I was trained in neurology, which is a very difficult subject to actually make a diagnosis, our professor would say, you have to make the diagnosis before the patient even sits down in front of us.
My
By
goodness.
watching them, watching how they walk in. And So the why is I'm curious. The why is I care. The why is that I think we're doing a very inadequate job of listening to our patients, of feeling our patients, of touching them. Nobody gets touched anymore. And therefore I think we need to go to that level of depth.
Well, that's the curiosity is what's driven you on. But today, I think, you know, all of this kind of removed medicine is that we kind of look at people, and I think this happens to women because, you know, we're talking about women today. I think women over time in our culture have been separated into their various parts. And it's what I like is that you talk about wholeness, and you also talk about not just bringing the body together, but unless you bring your spirit into this, unless you bring the intuitive side that really recognizes you're part of, you know, universal energy, you're kind of lost.
Oh, absolutely. And the first question I always ask anybody if they're consulting me because of an illness, I'll say, what was going on when you got sick? And I feel that should be the only question you ask. And the answer is, I'm often told, I know why I have cancer. I know why I had my heart attack. I know why I have fibroids. And it's like, well, why didn't anybody ask you? If you know, why are we,
why are we guessing here?
Why are we avoiding this information? And that's back to listening. If the patient or the client is listening to themselves, why aren't we? Why do we say, oh, that's ridiculous, it's nothing to do with that? Well, how arrogant can we be? And that's that intuitive knowing, and I've always had an intuitive knowing. I saw too much as a child. I say that because I used to faint because I didn't know how to deal with the massive information that was coming to me energetically, psychically, that I didn't know as a young child how to deal with, so I just fainted.
Oh, my goodness.
That didn't become an option when I became a doctor, but I always say I didn't become a doctor because I thought, wow, I can go and do this thing that's wonderful. Being a doctor was a real struggle because I had fainted during most of my teenage years when anybody suffered, and therefore it was like, I should stay away from suffering people.
You have that deep sensitivity, though.
Yes, it is. It's a wonderful, but even though I was brought up in a psychic world, I don't, my mother was very psychic, and we used to go to different events. I don't think anybody actually understood just how sensitive or psychic I was and what I could see. And
how did that shape you, that psychic ability?
Well, I think it's, I have to say that when I was very young, I'd get told off because I wouldn't want to talk to anybody because all I could see was several levels of this person, one of which might be screaming for help while the face was smiling. So I got confused as a child which, and I'm sure many of our listeners have that same issue, is, well, who am I actually talking to? I'm seeing a smiling face, but I'm feeling a very unhappy person. And I feel that as a little one, I didn't know how to cope, so I just hid away.
Mm-hmm.
And then
Yes.
later on, I started fainting, and then I became a doctor. And that was a great gift because it allowed me to, I think every carer, every doctor, every nurse always uses their intuition. That moment where you say, I think I'm just going to check on that patient again. Or I think I've had several episodes where everybody was saying, look, the tests are fine, send the patient home. And I would go, no, there's something wrong with this person and we haven't found it. And of course, they would have their heart attack while we were waiting for them to be sent home. And so, that sensitivity has been a tremendous gift. And it's also been a challenge because I had to really be able to create healthy boundaries so I didn't take on everybody else's problems. And I think that's a problem for many carers.
Well, when you go back and talk about tests, today we're tested to death. But of course, we talk about this in Master Lou's book, Digesting the Universe, that tests can only measure measurable things.
That's right.
But there's so much more to us than the measurable part of us, which we don't really have the technology to understand. And, your technology of intuition, if you will, is basically superior to some of these tests. And so somehow we have to really look into, if we go down that path, it only ends in one way, which is kind of, we start pulling apart live things, dead things to understand live things. And as you said earlier, your laboratory was on the run, but it was based on live people telling you live things. And you're understanding what they're telling you at a deeper level, not just, my back hurts.
That's right. And, the tests, you can only see what you... When we send someone for a test, we already believe what we want to see. And that, we know, is a real issue in quantum physics down to the level of research. You will always create that which you wish to see.
The observer.
The observer. The observer has a huge role. I know as a GP, when we used to have a young student or young doctor come in work with us, they often found 5 or 10 diagnoses that we'd missed because we almost became over-familiar with the patient and we didn't see it. I feel that if you work in one system, like cardiology, you're only ever going to see everybody having a heart problem. So the problem is that you get focused only in one direction. When you're working intuitively, you have to act like an innocent child. And that's that curiosity. You have to say, wow, this is a very new situation. I've never seen this before. You have to be curious all the time. And I was recently giving a talk on mystery, and I found that the initial meaning of the word mystery was initiate, she or he that does not see and does not speak. And I thought, what a wonderful word. Everybody needs to, when we meet anybody, whether we're in the caring professions or not, we need to meet them in mystery. We need to shut our minds down, we need to stop thinking, and we need to just enter into the unknown with this person, because that's where the healing's going to come from.
Do you feel so much of this is just we're so conditioned for prejudgment, if you will, especially for women? You come in, a 45-year-old woman comes in, and it's, she must be postmenopausal, and this is, or premenopausal, or whatever it is, and this is the way it's going, and I know the way it's going, and, I know what all her problems are.
Oh, it's a horrendous. My passion is, at the moment, as you know, is on women, and it's literally undoing the myths that women carry. So someone was just telling me that she's got a 15-year-old granddaughter, and all her friends are all on the pill already, not just because of pregnancy, and again, I might have thoughts about that, but because they've all got cramping, and the doctor thinks this would be the best way. And I went, oh my goodness. What are we? The medication. So we have 60% of women who have premenstrual syndrome, and all people say is, it's that time of the month, she'll get over it. So if we had 60% of men, I have to say, having some problem, we'd all be putting big money into the research.
We would have a solution.
We'd have a solution, And
That's so interesting. I mean, Master Lucy's many Western women exactly with those problems.
yes,
And what is so astounding is the acceptance of it as if it's a natural part of life. That
that's
the
right.
menstrual cycle causes pain. And he's said many times, especially in his, programs and lectures, no, it's a liver function disorder.
Yeah.
Or, and additionally some people have a chi deficiency or an energy deficiency in this kind of world we live in. So it's eminently solvable.
Well,
And
exactly.
people are like, no, I need those pills.
Well, exactly. And so it's become we go back what I see is that the period and the menses is the most important time for a woman. The whole menstrual cycle is what makes us as women. Unfortunately, we have been programmed to believe the only reason we have a menstrual cycle, a womb, a menses, is just to have children. And that is so untrue. That women have, on average, 1 to 2 babies in a lifetime, if that, but on average, 1 or 2. And we have 420 cycles. That is an outrageous amount of waste if you're just wanting 1 to 2 babies. And I do not believe that nature ever gets it wrong. So the message I want to put out is the reason we have a menstrual cycle is that every month we give birth to a new idea, a new dream. We are creative beings. Our eggs, we have 2 million of them when we're born. We have 2 million potential ideas, dreams that women are here to shed. And the purpose of a man, dear souls, and if you're listening, I love you, we will tell you what to do. You need to go and do it.
I love that idea.
It's perfectly worked out for thousands of years. Men and women always worked together, that the women were the spiritual leaders who got the insight, and the men used their tremendous powers of intellect and strength to go out and do it, and then we all were very happy together.
Well, isn't that what's missing? I mean, even we could talk about it certainly at the body level, but even between the sexes, which are not diametrically opposed, that the cooperation and that loving thing that you talked about is that the creativity and the strength together manifest things that were meant to be manifested, long time ago in people's psyche, really. So how do we come back? How do we help women really in everyday life come back to understanding how beautiful and how valuable and how amazingly creative they are in so many ways? Just the act of living is creative.
It is. I would so much like, and again, I can speak both to women who are still menstruating and women like myself who are not, but we all follow these moon cycles. If women could just understand that they are cyclical beings, we're not linear. So the men are much more in tune with the sort of 24/7 cycle. We're much more in tune with these cycles that after ovulation, we need to take time out, or we need to start slowing down towards our period. Now, obviously, you're not going to stop working, but to recognize that week before your period is a time not to take on new projects, not to take care of people. Say, hey, I'm not going to come and see you until after my period, or I'll visit then, or I'll do this, because in that week before your period, we're really getting ready to let go, to release, to be more in tune with our intuitive self, our spiritual self. That would reduce so much of the problems that women are having. And for me, for postmenopausal women like me, we need to align to the new moon and to recognize that that's our time for being still and being quiet and being intuitive. So that women reminding themselves of these things instead of trying to become a mini man. We have too many mini men, women who are being trained to be out there with the men, push past their cycles. You don't want the inconvenience of a period. You want to be more like this, get your intellect working, get your mind working. This is not what women are about. It's not to say I can't be as active and athletic as a man, but it's not my gift. My total power comes from tapping into the energy beneath our feet, which is I call dragon energy, being a spiritual inspirer, being a spiritual leader, and really being that nurturer that women do very naturally. So I think women returning to that, and I meet many men who say, please help my women in my life to love their feminine, because as my husband always says, there's nothing more beautiful in the universe than a woman in her power. And the men are just waiting for women to tell them what it is they can do to help them and hold them and nest them, because men really want to do that.
Well, that's that whole part that you're putting your finger on, which is nurturing yourself, which, we could talk about things you could, women, I think, are bombarded with magazines and programs and, lots of internet information on, you could, like, reduce the size of your arm or go on this diet or, all this physical things you can do to, quote, unquote, be perfect. But the bottom line is, if your mind, the frequency of your thoughts that are very powerful and that move the function of your organs, if you're not really understanding what your real beliefs are, I shouldn't really nurture myself because everybody else needs nurturing.
Yeah.
Me last.
Yeah.
And so the belief system that you carry, which kind of drives you in this life, is a really important thing to at least turn around and look at, because otherwise, what you're saying, which is so important, you can't get there.
No, and I absolutely agree. And one of the ways in which women know that something's not okay, we've got to know that something's not okay. This isn't replacing one system with another. So that
No.
I see women who are, when I go to the gym, who are rushing in to go to the gym, rushing to do this, rushing to do that. They'll tell me, well, I went to the gym, I nurtured myself, and I went to a massage, I nurtured myself. But it's all doing. It's all about doing and ticking something off a list. And so the ability to recognize when you're not in tune with the actual feeling of nurturing. And as you say, Ellen, our mind is very set into certain things with shoulds and musts. But I do know that women feel, and the problem that we have is we're told we shouldn't feel this way. We shouldn't feel angry. We shouldn't feel irritated. If we're feeling something as a woman or as a man, it means something's missing, something's not okay. So that's why when we get a pain, we don't need to take an analgesic. We need to say, wow, there's a messenger in my body wanting to speak to me.
So true. Your body never lies. As Master was very fond of saying, your body never lies. Your mind can lie to you and say, oh, I shouldn't feel that pain, or, oh, I'll just cover that up with a little Tylenol. But the bottom line is your body never lies, and it's telling you so many things, and we just can't seem to have to decode all of that information that comes from really another place.
It does. It does. One of the greatest powers for women is to actually come together, to share. And when women are together, they are in their power. And what we know is that when women are stressed, they will tend to phone someone or want to talk to someone.
That's true.
It's called tending and befriending. And it's all to do with our oxytocin levels, that when we are actually stressed and we produce oxytocin, it's enhanced by our estrogen to get together, whereas testosterone causes the men to want to separate. That's what they do in stress. So we have a very different reaction to stress due to the oxytocin relation. And what I find is that, this is why women's circles are so important, or women just getting together, or girls' night out. But it needs to be somewhere where you really do talk. You're not just talking about the children and the husband, or in terms of what are your children doing, what's your husband doing, It's really about, wow, how are you feeling, sister? And that is the power for women is, come on, you're with me now, take off the barriers, become naked with me, let's really talk. And I feel that in our such a busy world where women are multitasking and trying to do everything, and often only have texting or emails or Facebook to connect to, it's not enough. We know that the oxytocin, which is the level of it's a hormone that causes us to feel bonded and safe and secure, is enhanced by looking in someone's eyes and feeling a touch and hearing a voice. And when we don't have that, we feel isolated and lonely, and many of our symptoms, such as anything in the immune system, gets raked up, and depression. So I really advocate women getting together, and not just, as I say, to have let's go out and let's all sit on the floor. Let's have time where we're not thinking about what the next thing we have to do. and switch off all those darn phones and everything else.
All those darn phones. Well, tell us, how do you guide the women who, interface with you or come to you? Certainly at all, I know you're going to be many places coming up, right? You're going to be, in Malta and a few other,
Australia.
Gosh, you're a busy lady.
Yeah.
So how, when people gather with you, how do you guide them in terms of, looking at oneness and looking at, every day you have to live your life, and every day you can choose health, or you can kind of go the other way. So how do you pull them, as you're saying, you have to get together, you have to kind of talk with each other, but how else do you, as you have these two sides of you, Western allopathic medicine, but then this kind of, I would call it a higher level of intuitive understanding. How do you guide people?
Well, I have one simple thing I always start with is making people feel comfortable. For women and men, what pleasures you? What nurtures you? As you said, many a time women will put themselves at the bottom of the priority list. And we have to put ourselves at the top. So whatever you do first thing in the morning, make it for you. So whether you have to get up a few minutes early for that, but make time for yourself. Because what we're talking about to go towards oneness involves change. And I have worked with people with change all my life and tried to encourage them to take tiny steps towards change or big steps. Oh my goodness, what a challenge. You see, it's everybody. I have taught intuition for many years. Everybody can listen to intuition. They're very good at it, but nobody follows through.
Why is that?
Because it involves change. It involves the unknown. And we don't do that if we don't feel safe and rooted and nurtured. So first of all, if we're ever going to help heal people, is to make people feel secure. Make people feel that they feel confident and nurtured. And so simple things, as I say, is start taking care of yourself. Forget sitting meditating if meditation isn't your thing. If meditation is the thing that nurtures you, great. But stop this shoulding first thing in the morning. Go out. I go out in my garden and wander around my garden with my cup of coffee. I might go in my hot tub. And, you might say, well, that's lucky, or you can do those things. Everybody can get out somewhere, or you can do something. Maybe you just want to read a magazine or a book. But don't start with the shoulds in your life. And several times a day, keep saying, am I enjoying this? Because joy comes from the heart, and the heart is where our intuition speaks from. So if you're not enjoying it, stop doing it. And then someone says, well, I've got a mortgage. Yeah, I know all of that, because you see, the reason that I've been a doctor is I've seen people die without joy. I've seen these. I'm not making wild allegations or, suggestions. I've been on the dead beds or the beds of people who have died, and I've been on the deathbeds where people are saying, God, you know what we always say, nobody ever says as they're dying, they wish they worked more. And
right, exactly.
What they say is, why didn't I take more time out? Why didn't I say I loved them? Why didn't I have been on many deathbeds. And it's never, ever about work or money. It's
no,
about,
it can't be.
So
that's heartbreaking in a way, but that kind of making that transition and not having done pretty much what your spirit asked you to do. You come in with this contract and then it doesn't get fulfilled. I'm sure it gets fulfilled in a different way, but then you leave and it's, wow, I wish I had spent time with my children, or I wish I hadn't gone to work. Having been a single parent, I can attest to many of those thoughts and feelings because the culture is so strongly kind of against what you're saying, really.
It is, and so hello, what have you been doing today? What are you up to? What have you written? That's the conversations we have. And even amongst women, so how many books have you written? Well, it's like, what are we doing? Who cares?
Right.
Who cares? That isn't who I am. It's what I do, but it's not who I am. And that's why I'm saying getting together. And you're absolutely right. But I meet a lot of people on spiritual paths who are, again, driven by their mission. And I go, stop it. stop it. The mission is never to suffer and struggle, because that's literally just living another human life. And you might say to me, well, life can't just all be easy. No, but we have choices. And we have choices as to how we live it.
Exactly.
So it's not, I may have a pile of things I have to do, but it's my choice how I do them.
And also, really, doing is not being, is it?
It isn't. And, you can, if I can get up for 5 minutes and just, stretch and have a good feeling for 5 minutes and go back to that list. But it's when I forget that I have choice that I become a victim to my life. And once we become a victim to our life, we cannot change. And once we can't change, we will never find wholeness and oneness. Because that wholeness and oneness, if I describe it in this way, it's like we are all a beautiful flower with lots of petals. And our soul is in the center of that flower. And that soul is connected to our heart, the rhythm of our heart, and rhythm of our being. And it speaks from there. We need, if we want to become whole, which is the same meaning as healed and oneness, we want to be able to show and express all of our petals in this life. However, we get addicted to one or two petals. And we do it over and over again. If you believe in past lives, I see people doing it many past lives of the same darn thing. So
same darn thing.
We go round and round this petal thinking, I've got to get it better, But I say, but you've got gold stars in this. You've got gold stars in being an overly responsible person. You've got gold stars in caring for people. You can't do any more. So if you're not learning something from an experience, stop doing it. Because the only reason we're doing it is to fulfill a destiny that we know how to do it. So once you know how to do something, stop doing it. Because it's not helping you to grow. Because there are, let's say, another 5 petals you haven't even entered yet. And that's the issue. So what I'm saying is it's not fulfilling it through, if you're driven only through 1 or 2 aspects of your life, take a sabbatical, take time out. And that's what illness does. Illness says, okay, I've had enough of this. You've been in that petal for so long, I'm going to make you stop, whether you like it or not.
That is so true. Spirit comes back and says, you know what, enough. You've done this many times. Enough.
It does.
Now go this way, right? Now go the other way.
Our soul loves us so much, it will actually even die for us.
Yes.
I've seen that happen where people say, I can't change, and therefore they die. And I'm saying is, knowing that you have a loving part of you that loves you so much to make you sick is a very different way of looking at illness. I see people who hate their job and keep talking about leaving, and then they get fired, and then they moan because they got fired. But the soul
Which could be the best
you
thing that ever
your job.
happened.
I helped you.
Right, I helped you get out of that job.
I helped you. You were miserable in your marriage, so I helped them have an affair so you could get out. And what are you complaining about?
Wow. But isn't that, it's so funny because in Digesting the Universe, we talk about just the simple, and it is pretty simple, the idea of relativity, is when you see things from a different angle, you see different things. So look at, I'm divorced, but because of that affair, I'm out of the worst marriage ever.
Exactly.
So you're right. It depends on how we shift our way of thinking about things, right? That makes us healthy or not healthy.
And we need to be honest with it. We're not, when someone will die and they're, so they're in their grief naturally, but then you say, well, did you enjoy being in that marriage? I hated it. Okay, let's be realistic here. It's not that you don't miss that person because you've enjoyed fighting with them for 40 years. But let's not make them an angel and put halos around them. This wasn't a happy experience. Now you've got a chance to have a happy experience. And again, I'm saying that because I also tap into the spirit world who say, hey, I've left so that they can step up. We need to recognize that when someone dies or leaves, sometimes they're making space for us to become fully alive in that flower, those petals. They're causing those petals to awaken. And
That's beautiful. Yes, I love the idea of being some kind of flower, and that petal idea. It's so, it gives us such depth in a way. It says, oh, I have many facets to myself. You just have to discover them.
that's
That discovery.
that's going to be our sadness, Ellen, when we do pass over. We say, wow, look, that kept coming towards me. That's the intuition. It kept coming to me, and I kept pushing it away. And that's the sign of it, so that someone might say, oh, I've always meant I was going to write, but I never got round to it, or I wanted to do art and I never got round to it.
Right. I had so many poems in me, but I never put them in the world. I never shared them.
That's right. And then, then I have to say I meet people who say, oh, people said I should be a writer, but I hate writing. Don't write!
Don't carry that.
No,
right.
I know I'll never be an artist. I'm still a 5-year-old artist. I don't need to prove that I'm any better at that.
Yes, I don't think I'll be one of those either. But I do know that I was born with all of these probabilities that I could manifest, and that when I see the significances that I've kind of chosen in my life, it's led me in certain directions. And yet, I could have gone in other directions as well. Now I see that. But it's just a way of looking at yourself as a multidimensional person.
I think that's so. I mean, that lovely Richard Bart book 1, where he describes, we all go down runways in an aeroplane, and we could go in. So there's a part of me that stayed with that boyfriend that I had when I was in my 20s. And there's another part of me that, went and traveled when I thought I wouldn't have done. I love that idea that there's these parts that are living out that life.
Right, the other probabilities of yourself that are still growing and manifesting somewhere where we can't be focused on it. But it is happening, right?
It is happening, and there's no mistakes.
I
think the only error, regret we may have is not ever having tried in the first place.
Oh, yes. That's beautiful.
I remember a man who was one of my patients when I was general practitioner. He said he'd always wanted to have his own business, and he decided after 20 years of working as an electrician, he would go and start up his own business. And after 2 years, he was bankrupt, and he had to go and ask for his job back in this company. And everybody said, I told you so, and he said, but at least I did it.
Yes. At least I tried. And even if it looks like a failure from the outside, what he learned was invaluable.
And I would say the same about relationships I've had. Where people after 2 years on would say, oh, we knew that wouldn't work. And I had to look at them and say, you have no idea where I have been taken because of that relationship. You have no idea of how much of me opened up because of it. And so I want everybody who's listening to look at their life, and this is the mystery, this is the oneness. Everything you chose everything in this life. Everybody who's listening is a highly evolved soul. And they said, I want those situations, those. You come down here and you think, wow, that was a not very good choice. But never ever see anything as a mistake. That if you can look back and just say, if that hadn't happened, I wouldn't be here now. Or if that person hadn't come into my life, I wouldn't have grown in this particular way. That's what this is about. It isn't the what we do, it's how we grow. How we blossom as a flower because of an experience. And sometimes the very worst experiences give us a kick to say, I'm never going to go back there again. Or I'm going to fight for people who have a similar issue. We're all programmed to be swayed by our past, but it's not to be held in a woundedness. It's to take the gem of wisdom and move forward rather than holding on to the story. That's all that it's about. And for women, especially when we come back to the period, that's the time when we let go of the story and we just take in the gem. Because that's what life's about, is growing rather than being slowed down by old baggage.
Yes, old baggage, and not looking at the baggage in a different way, so we can really heal from that. And as you say, everything was intended.
Yes, everything was intended.
It's not random. Our lives are not random, and we can never see every facet that's impacting the thing that's happening in front of us.
Oh,
You know how you meet,
absolutely.
right? You meet someone at the grocery store and
Yes.
they're so rude and you can't believe it. And then you find out later, they just lost their job or their child just, has a serious illness and you're like, wow, I just couldn't see it.
Yeah,
Couldn't see
absolutely,
it.
absolutely. And we never know what effect we're having on other people. As you say, there's also that time when you
Well,
just,
that's true.
you say something to someone and years on they say, wow, that one or two words you said to me had such an impact. And, it's a blessing. I think of all the different angels who have, human angels that have been in my life who have just popped in for 2 or 3 minutes. And I feel that we make these contracts before we come onto the planet. And we say, look, if you ever see me sitting down and not moving or sitting in a gutter, will you come and just give me a little nudge? And
Right.
I think we set these things up that people, I call them your mentors or, your guides. They come in and they just think back of the people who have given you an encouraging word or maybe just mentioned something you didn't know about or just hugged you at a moment when you needed a hug. And I often think, did those people actually exist, or did I just manifest them? Who cares? But the fact is, I feel that there is so much. People often ask me, "Oh, I wish I knew who my guides were. Am I connected to spirit?" It's like, oh my God, you don't know how much help you have around you. There is such a team that walks with every individual. And I often feel that when we're in our darkest moments, that's when we see the light, the candle light is seen then, that we are never left. We are always with others. But the one thing that the spirit world can never do is interfere with our free will. And so that if we choose to sit in the gutter, if we choose to, whatever we choose, if we choose to stay in a relationship that isn't serving us, they can't do anything. They can give us, ask someone to phone us up and say, hey, you still in that relationship? Or they can turn on the television and we see this program. We go, oh, that's me in that relationship, in that awful film or whatever.
Yes.
But they can't do anything that actually gets in the way of us making our choices. And that's why I feel that many a time we, especially as women, we need to be with other women who will say, sister, is that the best are you nurtured by that situation? Or, let's celebrate who you are. Whatever it is, we all need a support team, both physical, human, and spiritual. And the spiritual one never leaves us. I can reassure everybody.
Yes, because everything is energy, right? And everything has consciousness, and consciousness has purpose. So our purpose, and it's purpose not just here on this planet, it's purpose as a much greater entity, much greater being.
Absolutely.
And,
yes.
Here we are.
Connected. Yes.
Yes, they're all connected.
Relevant.
And that gives us, everything's connected. That's why when you smile at somebody, it's not a random moment that they're in your life that you actually have the opportunity to smile at them, and do it because it was meant to happen, and you could change their life. And you, as you said before, you never know.
You never know.
Not with your cognitive brain, but you do know with your heart, I believe.
Yes, and in some ways it doesn't matter.
Yes,
it doesn't matter.
That's right.
It's meeting everybody as if they're another part of you, and I know that if I feel good, if I feel happy, then everybody around me is happy around me. And if I feel a bit miserable one day, then I feel everybody is. And just how quickly our mood can change other people and they change us. And it just...
Because at the highest, you're right, at the highest level, we're all connected.
We're all connected, and it's just how it is in that moment. And I just want to say that people will say to me, well, this is a family illness we have or a family problem. And truly, ancestrally, if we see that there's an issue, heart disease, cancer, rather than just saying this is the way it has to be for me, what we've done is we're carrying the baton that is actually saying, no, I'm going to change direction. I'm going to do something differently. And that is what we are really also here to do, is to say, okay, if my father died at 41 because he worked himself to death having had a heart attack, I'm going to do things differently. And when we look at our family history of illness, it's a very good way as saying, how can I do things differently rather than the same? And it's got nothing I'm not against people taking supplements and doing things in that way, but that's not preventive. That's fear-driven medicine.
Yes.
Be extraordinarily different than somebody else. Look at their psychological way of being, their spiritual way of being. That's what will bring healing. And when we heal ourselves, we heal the last 7 generations and the next 7 generations still to come. That's well worth it. So when someone asks me about their daughter or granddaughter and they say, what can I do to help them, I say, heal that illness in yourself. Because whatever's going on in you, maybe it's a diabetic child, and diabetes is so much about not enjoying the sweetness of life. If you start to enjoy the sweetness of life, you will heal the diabetes in your family. And that will be a huge gift to everybody.
That is a huge gift. And, here we are. You and I, I'm sure, both love the moon. I'm always crazy about the moon when it comes. And here we are in the energies. Tomorrow's the full moon, right? And there is a lunar eclipse, I believe. But here we are in the energies of the full moon, and you've talked pretty eloquently about it. But you have this new book, A Handbook of Women's Mysteries. Can you kind of talk about the core of that book and what passion drove you to open up that book at this time?
Well, this book before that, The Healing Power of the Sacred Woman, is a very in-depth book, and it brings in both mythology, history, anatomy, physiology, everything I can to be talking about women on so many different levels. But since I brought that book out, I have also been teaching on this subject, and I've become more aware of some of the more core issues that are women's, which are very focused around. They can be focused on periods and receiving our power and being involved, what is a healthy sexual relationship, etc. So I wanted to be a little bit more focused. I also wanted to bring in meditations or visual imageries, because I believe that a lot of healing can take place when we go into that place of innocence and curiosity as we do in a visual imagery exercise. So what I'm presenting is 14 different meditations, and then little write-ups, 3 or 4 pages, around each of those meditations, or a series of questions. And hence the Handbook of Women's Mysteries. It's really not just another book. It's a workbook. It's a working with yourself. It's a asking yourself questions, going into the meditations. And I hope in that way it's a very complete package that I'm very excited about. And it will have some tutorials involved with it as well, where I want to teach as well and show things. And I did that because I feel that that would connect women so much more to things that are happening in their everyday life. As I say, problems with relationships or problems with their periods, or maybe not just problems, but how do I become a more empowered woman? How do I use my body and be with my body in a more loving way? And that's really why I wrote the book.
Well, you've written many, many, many books. God bless you. And thank you for all of your help in doing this and helping women really look at life and themselves, the beauty of themselves, from a different perspective, from an expansive one, which we don't really hear about very often.
Right.
So I'm going to say we could talk forever, and you're just so wonderful to listen to, and your kindness and your compassion is really, really special. So thank you for being with us today. I'm going to say that everybody out there, you have been listening to Dr. Christine Page, who is a pioneer complementary healthcare expert, and you'll receive a link to this webinar, and because of this valuable information, you'll share this wisdom of Dr. Page and really bring it to others, okay? If you've enjoyed your time with us, you want to learn more, please visit us at Building Bridges for Traditional Chinese Medicine. We'd be so happy to welcome you. And you can learn more about TCM World Foundation on tcmworld.org or tcmworld.org and tcmconference.org. Okay, and please join us. It's been a pleasure, Christine, to have you today.
Oh,
I
it's
really
wonderful.
thank you.
Thank you so much, Ellen. And thank
You are
for
very generous with your time and your thoughts and your great spirit. So I want to thank you.
Bless you and bless everybody at the TCM. Thank you.